Arcturian Group, August 31, 2014. By Marilyn Raphael. Website, onenessofall.com. We of the Arcturian Group once again come to greet you during these times of seeming confusion and change. You are powerful beings of light, but when in the physical, do not remember this. The human experience causes many to think of themselves simply as flesh that will die, and that is nothing after death. Because of this, these dear ones often relentlessly seek lives that encompass everything they believe to be good and important regardless of consequences. You often hear the phrase, "You only have one life, so live it to the fullest." Well, yes, do live to the fullest, which means living in a consciousness of truth, and not human concepts. You do have only one life on Earth, one at a time. You have all lived hundreds of lifetimes. You who read and resonate with these messages are old souls. Know that you are able to resonate with the energy of higher truths because they are your attained state of consciousness, otherwise messages of truth would make no sense. Energy flows and resonates with like energy, which is why you are now discovering that certain people, foods, entertainments, etc., no longer seem important. Your resonance has changed while these things have not. You no longer resonate with them. We come once again to speak of love, but this time with regard to love of self. Most human beings carry some sense of self-loathing or low self-esteem, which often manifests outwardly through acts of violence, suicide, abuse, and actions of a negative nature, or in a lesser degree in the refusal to accept help, gifts, compliments, or love. In order to love in the highest sense, one's own self must be included, which often proves to be more difficult than the act of loving others. As an individual begins to awaken, he becomes aware of past experiences where he failed to meet the mark, memories of saying or doing things that now shock and shame him. He becomes very aware of human failings and begins to compare himself to what he believes he should be. Each time he reads or hears how a person must love self, he hears a little voice that says, "Oh, but remember, you did or said this or that, you are not worthy of love. You are a bad person." Forgiveness is the first step in loving self. The basis for forgiveness is the understanding that a person can only live and act from their attained state of consciousness. Issues creating shame result from actions that were taken in a different state of consciousness. You are no longer that same place, which is why you may react with shame regarding some past action. You are seeing from a whole new level. Human beings learn from trial and error in the earlier phases of evolution, which is what karma is all about. Karma is simply the balancing of energies, a way to learn and experience all facets of whatever particular energy an individual has set in motion. At some point in the evolutionary process, karma is no longer needed because one begins to live out from a higher level and be taught from within. As serious students of truth, you have been meditating, sending light to Gaia and her kingdoms, and doing what you were guided to do and study. However, many of you have never forgiven yourselves for real or perceived faults and actions, or seriously and consciously considered what it means to love yourselves. Instead, the idea of loving self is pushed aside and ignored, while your personal sense of self, ego, continues to carry around the belief of being unworthy, or less than, like a heavy ball and chain, lifetime after lifetime. Even for long-time spiritual students, the idea of loving self may feel inappropriate and like ego action, which it is not. These feelings simply represent a third-dimensional concept of what it means to love self. In order to move more deeply into living, moving, and having your being in the higher frequencies of truth and love, you must include yourself, for all are an end of the one, you as much as anyone else, no matter how holy another may seem. In your times of quiet and meditation, make a practice of going through all of your chakras, bringing the golden white light down through each from above the crown with the intention that each chakra be opened, cleared, balanced, and aligned as the light enters it. When you reach the solar plexus, which is the seat of personal identity, pay special attention to the honoring of self. stating your intention to clear and release any and all old energies still being held and acting as blockages within this chakra. The memory of some person or experience may pop into your awareness, indicating something needing to be cleared. You may remember some experience or person who activates feelings of inadequacy or self-loathing. Whether or not anything comes to mind at that time, state your intention to release with love any and all negative energetic cords that may still be attached to you from people or situations in this life or past lives. Visualize light flooding your whole being, and especially the solar plexus chakra, and then let it all go. Loving self does not refer loving the ego self, although you must also learn to accept and not resist that part. The ego self is not the real you, but is a perceived, false sense of self that is built up over lifetimes lived within the beliefs of being separate from source and all others. Loving self means acknowledging your divine nature and forgiving any missteps taken while in ignorance of this. Loving self means having the courage to admit when you are wrong while not berating yourself regarding some issue of the past. Loving self means to live out from who and what you really are in spite of appearances. It is a taking back of the innate power you unconsciously allowed to be taken from you. During the process of learning to love self, try to avoid going into resistance with regard to the thoughts that may come into your awareness. When a spiritual student begins to recognize and acknowledge his divine nature, he often finds that there also comes that determined ego voice whispering of how short he falls of the truths he is learning and reminding him of the many ways in which he has shown that his nature is not divine. There will come the temptation to resist these thoughts, telling oneself, "I must not allow this voice to govern me. Go away, I will not accept these thoughts," etc. Resistance simply gives a power to these impersonal ego suggestions. A better inner response would be, "Yes, I have believed myself unworthy, and yes, I still carry guilt and feelings about certain things I have done in the past, but I now choose to release these old energies and move ever more deeply into an awareness of who and what I really am, to accept that I am that I am." Learning to recognize and ignore the ego blather will begin to shift your belief system. It won't be long before you have reprogrammed habitual thinking and begun to trust in the truth, because you now realize that you not only have, but are the power and presence to be what you are and do what you came to do. For most, change does not happen overnight. The programs of separation and duality have been long in place, programs that led you to accept that you were less than others and that only those with money, looks, and power, education, or holiness were important or worthy of love. All are in and of the one. The appearances and circumstances of daily living for each and every person has to do with their pre-incarnation choices. You are ready, dear ones, ready to embrace and begin to actually love yourselves through acknowledging that you are beings of light, learning and evolving through third-dimensional experiences. Once you unlock the door of loving self as self, you will discover that this is the long-hidden key, the Holy Grail, hidden where none find it until ready, and thus you open the way for divine love and all its qualities to flow infinitely within and without. We are the Arcturian Group.